Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing what might be some of the better value bets for college basketball on November 22nd, 2016. Unfortunately, a lot of the spreads haven't been released yet for some of the matchups in some of these invite tournaments that we have going on right now, but there's still a lot of other games that we can discuss, and I have about 10 or so matchups that I want to talk about. And if you're interested in what games I'm going to be covering in this video, I'll have a list of the matchups posted in the video description. And also, if you're looking to get notifications or just help the channel out in general, you can click the subscribe button, and then you'll get those notifications in your feed when I release these videos. And also, if you want, you can click thumbs up, which is also a big help. And if you're looking for more sports content in college basketball or any other major U.S. sports betting event, you can head over to stumpthespread.com, and we have free and premium content over there. If you're on desktop, you can click this Stump the Spread logo right here on the top right corner, and it'll take you over if you're looking for that particular information. And also, if you're not on desktop, I'll also link Stump the Spread in the video description. Alright, so heading into the thick of this video, the first matchup I want to talk about is Towson versus Boston College. This is a Towson team that returns a lot of talent from last year's squad that won 20 games, and this is a team that really did a nice job of pushing Maryland on the road in their last outing. This is a pretty physical Towson squad that has some versatile players, and you can see that this spread has already gone up from -1.5 to -3. People are catching on to this Towson squad. They're going to be a serious threat in their conference this year, potentially winning their conference title if everything goes right for them, but they'll get a lot of competition up there at the top of their particular league over in the CAA. And then you have Boston College, who's really had a brutal time in the ACC over the last few seasons. This is a Boston College basketball program that's really been struggling as of late, and the team actually doesn't even look like they might be able to pick up as many wins as they did a year ago, which is a bit disappointing. This is a team that lost some of their key pieces from last year's squad, so still remaining a work in progress over there at Boston College. So we're going to take Towson here on the road, giving the points as the best value bet. Moving on down to Yale versus Pittsburgh. This is a Yale squad that not many people were having a lot of confidence coming into the year, given the fact that they lost some of their key players from last year's tournament squad, and then also with Makai Mason being out with injury for the whole season is really a blow to Yale. But what we've seen out of the Bulldogs has actually been fairly impressive. In their first two wins, they looked really great on the offensive side of the ball, especially in their road win against a pretty good Washington squad. That was a really good feather in their cap. And then you have this Pittsburgh team who's got a new coaching staff this year. They're coming off a nice bounce-back win against Marquette after losing to SMU on a neutral site. This is a Pittsburgh team that has some pretty strong pieces, but this is probably a Panther squad that's going to finish more in the middle area of the ACC and probably be in that bubble range once we get to March and are picking teams to make the NCAA tournament. Yale's coming off a tough defeat on the road against Virginia, and where their offense wasn't able to break through that really incredible Virginia defense, but we do expect the Bulldogs to have a little bit more success on the offensive side of the ball in this one, and with the spread going up to 10.5, we do think that Yale has pretty good value here. Now to talk about Arkansas and Minnesota. This is a Minnesota team that really had their struggles last year, especially in Big Ten play, where they finished pretty much in the basement of the conference, not finding much in the way of any kind of wins last year. But Minnesota does return some key pieces, and they bring in some intriguing guys that have looked like they've been gelling so far this year. Minnesota's remains undefeated, as well as Arkansas, but both teams have gone against somewhat of a manageable schedule. This should be a pretty competitive game. Minnesota's getting the home court advantage in this one, and you can see Minnesota has been overperforming expectations early on, which is why this spread has jumped up here from a pick'em to -3. But even at the -3, we do still think that Minnesota is the better value bet here, behind their home crowd advantage. All right, now to talk about Toledo and Middle Tennessee State here real quick. Toledo has looked pretty solid out of the gate, especially offensively. They've been able to put up some pretty good numbers. And then you have Middle Tennessee State, who Everyone remembers last year they beat Michigan State in the NCAA tournament. This is a team that returns a lot of their key guys like Giddy Potts and Robert Upshaw, but out of the gate, the Blue Raiders haven't been looking quite as good as people were expecting. I'm not sure if this is just a blip or a trend for the squad, but we do expect MTSU to compete in the upper tier of Conference USA and make another push to make the NCAA tournament again this year. Even though Toledo has been looking pretty good, we do still think that Middle Tennessee State is the better bet here on their home court, giving the points. Long Beach and Washington, we have a Long Beach State squad that brings in a lot of intriguing transfer talent, but it's just going to take this group a little while to kind of work in all of these new pieces. And also, Long Beach State is going against just a ridiculously tough schedule. They've lost 4 in a row in blowout fashion, starting with their defeat against Wichita State, and then they headed over to North Carolina where they were throttled, and then on to Louisville where the same thing happened, and then in their last outing, Long Beach was demolished again on the road, losing to UCLA. This is yet another tough road game for Long Beach, but a little bit more manageable than the opponents they've been going against as of late. This is a Washington squad that's not ranked, and Washington did lose some key pieces in the offseason, players that moved on to pro ball, but this is a group that's reloaded. And even though Washington lost their opener against Yale and what was a pretty disappointing result for them, they have been looking a little bit better as of late. But we do think that this Long Beach State squad does have enough talent to kind of keep things semi-competitive here against Washington, kind of like Cal State Fullerton was able to do last week. So we see the 49ers keeping things competitive enough where getting the points feels like the better bet with the road team. Moving down to Oregon State against Tulsa. This is an Oregon State that made a surprise run to the NCAA tournament a year ago. They lose their best player in Gary Payton Jr., who moved on in the past offseason, and this is an Oregon State squad that's expected to take a step back as a result. They still have really good head coaching, and they do bring back some key pieces like the Coach Tinkle's son, who's been leading the squad in scoring. Oregon State hasn't looked great at times this year, but this is a road matchup where they at least have a shot at the win. This is a Tulsa team that opened with a really bad home loss against a Jacksonville State squad that isn't nearly as good as this Oregon State squad. Tulsa loses a lot of key players from last year's tournament team. This is a Tulsa squad that's expected to take a pretty big step back, and we have been seeing that out of this Golden Hurricane squad thus far. This should be a pretty competitive game, but we do feel like Oregon State now getting the 2 full points is going to be the better value bet in this one. And I just want to touch on this Wyoming versus Pacific matchup really quickly. Wyoming, they lost their leading scorer this past offseason with Josh Adams, who really was a huge part of Wyoming's offensive production last year. He was one of the leading scorers in the nation. Wyoming loses him, but they return pretty much everyone else to a team that actually might be better this year than they were last year. This is a unit that's looking pretty cohesive and also bringing that well-known Wyoming defense. The Cowboys have looked pretty strong out of the gate, and going here on the road against a beatable Pacific squad, we do think this is going to be a pretty competitive matchup when we do like Wyoming getting the points here as the better value bet. And we can see a lot of games here that still don't have spreads. You can probably expect most of these spreads to come out probably at around 9:30 Eastern time, somewhere around there. That's when I usually see those spreads come out. Right now it's about 1:30 in the morning Eastern time, so we still have a little bit of time for a lot of these spreads before they come out. But another game that I want to touch on here is Idaho State against Eastern Kentucky. This is an Idaho State squad that brings back actually quite a bit of experience from last year's team that was about 500, but Idaho State hasn't been playing up to their expectations thus far, and they're coming off a pretty bad defeat in their last outing. They're led by Telfair, who's the younger brother of Sebastian Telfair, who a lot of people know from his time in the NBA. But outside of their guard play, this really isn't a Bengal squad that's able to do much down low in the post. And then we have Eastern Kentucky, who's opened with a pretty nice win against IUPUI. But beyond that, they've gone against a pretty tough schedule and haven't been finding those wins in some of those tougher matchups. We do expect this to be a fairly competitive matchup, but we do feel like Eastern Kentucky is the slightly better bet here, giving the 1 to 1.5 points. Alright, just a few more games here, 3 more games that I want to talk about, starting with Texas Tech against Auburn. Texas Tech really outperformed expectations last year, making a run to the tournament. They lose their head coach, and this is a team that also loses some key players from that squad, and as a result, Texas Tech should still probably finish somewhere in the middle to lower tier of the Big 12 in what is probably going to be a step back for the Big 12 this year after they got a lot of teams in the Big Dance a season ago. And then this is an Auburn team that has been, kind of bringing in head coach Bruce Pearl's guys over the last few years. This is a basketball team that has been, or at least in this past offseason, lost a lot of their key contributors, but now Auburn is starting to get more of the guys in that Bruce Pearl has been recruiting, and as a result, they're able to kind of bring that more up-tempo full-court press style, and this team really is bringing more of that Bruce Pearl identity. We do think that Auburn, even though they did lose a lot of key contributors this past offseason, they still have a pretty good shot at winning just as many, if not more, games than they did a season ago. We do feel like this has the potential to be a really competitive matchup, and with the spread shifting from -3.5 to you can get it about 5.5 to 6 points, we do feel like Auburn getting the points here is the better value bet in what should be a pretty tight competition. Moving on to Utah State against Purdue. Utah State has looked really impressive so far this year against a semi-manageable slate, but this is a big step in competition for the Aggies as they try to prove themselves against Purdue. Utah State is coming off a blowout win over Idaho State in their last outing, and where the Aggies looked really impressive. And Utah State brings back some of their key contributors from last year, including Jalen Moore, who is one of the top players in the Mountain West Conference, and he's really a guy to keep an eye on as he's developed throughout his career at Utah State, and he's really a fun guy to watch. And then you have Purdue, who competed really well at home against Villanova last week, but in their last outing, Purdue really struggled against Georgia State before pulling things out there at the end. Kind of interesting that Purdue wasn't able to show a little bit better against Georgia State, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The Boilermakers really struggled. This game is going to mean a lot more to Utah State in the scheme of things, so we do expect a little bit more effort out of the Aggies in this one. And on the neutral site, getting the 10.5 points, we do feel like Utah State is the better value bet in that particular matchup. Alright, I just have one more game I want to talk about here before I wrap things up, and that's going to be Indiana against Fort Wayne. Indiana has looked really strong so far this year, including their impressive overtime win against a very good Kansas squad. This is an Indiana team that won the Big Ten regular season title a year ago, and they definitely returned enough talent to kind of compete for that conference championship again this season. Then you have Fort Wayne, who's coming off a pretty decent year. I believe they won about 24 games last year. This is a squad that returns a lot of veteran pieces from that team and is expected to compete in the upper tier of the Summit League as a result. But this is also a Fort Wayne team that's kind of had a tougher time against some of the tougher competition that they've faced this year, which is a little concerning coming into this one. Interestingly, Fort Wayne does get the home court advantage here. You really got to respect Indiana for going on the road against a smaller in-state basketball program. I really respect bigger schools that do that, because it's definitely, not even necessarily for their resume or for the money. It's just kind of bringing more awareness to some of these smaller basketball programs that really do a great job, particularly for this Fort Wayne squad. Does have a decent shot at making the NCAA tournament this year out of their conference, but Fort Wayne does get the home court advantage, but you do also expect quite a few Hoosiers fans to be in the crowd there. They don't have to travel all that far, and Indiana has some of the best basketball fans in the nation, so we do expect a lot of Hoosier support to be in this one. So this spread surprisingly has shrunk from 12 to -11. You'd think that there'd be a lot more action on Indiana coming to this one, but we do think that the Hoosiers giving the points is going to be the slightly better value bet in this particular matchup. So that pretty much does it, guys, for this video. I touched on all the games that I feel have some decent betting value. If you're looking for more content beyond just what I talked about in this video, again, you can head over to stumpthespread.com, and we have our written matchup analysis articles there. You can get our daily free picks, or we also have quite a bit of premium content across not just college basketball, but also college football, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL. And also, I do recommend that you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications of when I release these videos, so you can get that early betting edge on the rest of the public with some of these earlier spreads that come out before they shift any particular direction. So thanks again, guys, for watching, and I should be releasing another one of these videos tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Bye.